The Scholar and the Spirit. Judge Zhu Erdan, a man from Lingyang known by his pseudonym Xiaoming, was renowned for his bold nature. However, despite his diligence in studying, he had never achieved fame due to his inherent slowness. One day, while drinking with several friends, someone joked with him, saying, "You are renowned for your boldness. If you can go to the Ten Kings Temple late at night and bring back the judge from the left corridor, we'll all treat you to drinks." It turned out that in Lingyang, there was a Ten Kings Temple, where the statues of deities were carved from wood and adorned to look lifelike. In the eastern corridor of the main hall stood a judge with a green face and red beard, with an especially fierce and menacing appearance. Some had heard the sounds of interrogation and torture emanating from the corridors at night. Everyone suggested this task to challenge Zhu Erdan. With a smile, Zhu Erdan rose from his seat and left. Not long after, a shout was heard outside the door. "I've brought the great bearded master." Just as everyone was getting up, Zhu Erdan walked in carrying the judge on his back. He placed the judge on the table and raised his cup, toasting 3 times. Seeing the appearance of the judge, everyone in the room was filled with fear and unease, hastily asking Zhu Erdan to take him back. Zhu Erdan raised his cup again, poured wine on the ground and prayed, "Forgive my rudeness. I trust the master won't take offense. My home is not far from here. Whenever you're interested, come for a drink. Don't be constrained by the boundaries between humans and spirits." Then he carried the judge back. The next day, everyone indeed invited Zhu Erdan for drinks. They drank until nightfall, and Zhu Erdan, drunk, returned home. Once the craving for alcohol passed, he lit a lamp and poured himself another drink. Suddenly, someone lifted the door curtain and entered. Looking up, Zhu Erdan was surprised to see the judge. He quickly stood up and said, "Oh, it seems I'm going to die." "You came to take my life tonight after offending you last night, didn't you?" The judge, with his large beard, smiled and said, "Not at all. I was grateful for your generous invitation last night, and as I happen to have free time tonight, I came to accept the invitation of a knowledgeable person like yourself." Zhu Erdan was delighted and pulled the judge's clothes, inviting him to sit down quickly. He got up to clean the tableware and lit the fire to warm the wine. The judge said, "It's warm weather. Let's have it cold." Zhu Erdan complied, placing the wine bottle on the table and running to inform his family to prepare dishes and fruits. His wife, upon learning of this, was shocked and tried to dissuade him from going out. Disregarding her, Zhu Erdan waited until she had prepared the dishes before bringing them over, changing the wine cups and drinking with the judge. Zhu Erdan inquired about the judge's name. The judge said, "My surname is Lu, I have no name." Zhu Erdan discussed classical learning with him, and the judge answered fluently. Zhu Erdan then asked him, "Do you understand the current 8-legged essays?" The judge replied, "I can still distinguish between good and bad. Studying and writing essays in the underworld are not much different from the mortal world." The judge Lu had an enormous capacity for alcohol and drank 10 large cups in a row. Since Zhu Erdan had been drinking all day, he didn't feel very drunk and fell asleep on the table. When he woke up, the candles were dim, and the ghostly guest had already left. From that day on, the spirit judge visited every 2 or 3 days, and the two became even closer, often sharing the same bed. Zhu Erdan presented his writings to the spirit judge, who took up a red pen and criticized them, saying they were not good. One night, after drinking, Ju Erdan fell asleep while the spirit judge was still drinking. In his dream, Ju Erdan suddenly felt a slight pain in his abdomen. When he woke up, he saw the spirit judge sitting by the bed, having already opened his belly and was rearranging his intestines. Astonished, Ju Erdan asked, "We have no enmity, why are you killing me?" The spirit judge smiled and said, "Don't be afraid, I'm going to give you a smarter heart." After finishing, he neatly arranged the intestines, placed them back into Ju Erdan's abdomen, closed the incision, and wrapped his waist with a cloth. Everything was done without a trace of blood on the bed, and Ju Erdan only felt a slight numbness in his stomach. Then, the spirit judge placed a lump of meat on the table. Ju Erdan asked what it was, and the spirit judge said, "This is your original heart. Your thoughts were not agile because I knew your heart was blocked. Just now, in the underworld, I selected the best heart from millions and replaced yours with it, and this will be left as a reserve." With that, he got up, closed the door, and left. At dawn, Ju Erdan untied the cloth and saw that the wound had healed, leaving only a red line on his stomach. From then on, his literary talent improved greatly, and he could remember everything he read. After a few days, he showed his writings to the spirit judge again, who said, "It's acceptable. However, due to your poor luck, you can only become a provincial scholar at most, not a high-ranking official." Ju Erdan asked, "When will the examination be?" "You will be the top candidate this year," replied the spirit judge. Soon after, Ju Erdan ranked first in the provincial examination, and in the autumn he also ranked first in the imperial examination. His classmates, who had always looked down on him, were amazed when they saw his examination papers. Upon careful inquiry, they learned that it was the spirit judge who had given him a brilliant mind. They all wanted to meet the spirit judge. He gladly agreed, and they hosted a feast to welcome him. At midnight, the spirit judge arrived. His red beard fluttered, and his piercing gaze seemed to penetrate the hearts of the guests. Their faces turned pale, and their teeth chattered. Soon, one by one, they fled the scene. Ju Erdan invited the spirit judge to his home for a drink. As they drank, Ju Erdan said, "You have washed my intestines and changed my heart. I owe you a great debt. There's something else I'd like to trouble you with, if you don't mind." The spirit judge asked him to speak. Ju Erdan said, "Since you can change hearts and minds, can you also change appearances? My wife's figure is not bad, but her face is not very pretty. Could you help me with that?" The spirit judge smiled and said, "All right, let me think of a solution." After a few days, the spirit judge came knocking on the door in the middle of the night. Ju Erdan hastily got up to invite him in. When he lit a candle and saw the spirit judge holding something wrapped in his clothes, Ju Erdan asked what it was. The spirit judge said, "You've been asking me about it for a while. I happened to obtain a beautiful head just now, so I came to fulfill my promise." Ju Erdan opened his clothes and saw that the blood on the head's neck was still wet. The spirit judge urged him to go to the bedroom quickly, so as not to disturb anyone. Ju Erdan was worried that the bedroom door was locked from inside. With a push of his hand, the spirit judge opened the door. Inside the bedroom, Ju Erdan's wife was sleeping soundly on the bed. The spirit judge handed the head to Ju Erdan, took out a dagger from his boot, held Ju's wife's neck with one hand, and with the other hand sliced it off as if cutting tofu. Ju's wife's head rolled off the pillow. The spirit judge quickly took the beautiful head from Ju Erdan's hands, placed it on his wife's neck, checked to see if it was properly aligned, pressed it firmly, and then moved the pillow to hide the severed head. After everything was done, he instructed Zhiyi to bury the severed head in an uninhabited place and then left. The next day, Zhu's wife woke up feeling a slight numbness on her neck and dryness on her face. When she rubbed her face, she noticed some bloodstains and became greatly alarmed. She called for a maid to fetch water to wash her face. When the maid brought water and saw her blood-stained face, she was horrified. After washing her face, the water in the basin turned red. When Zhu's wife looked up, the maid was shocked to see her completely transformed appearance. Zhu's wife took a mirror and was astonished to see her changed face, unable to comprehend what had happened. When Zhiyi came in, he told his wife about the incident of the spirit judge exchanging heads. He examined his wife repeatedly and found her eyebrows beautifully arched and dimples on her cheeks, resembling a painted beauty. Undoing her collar, he found only a red line on her neck, with the skin above and below the line having different colors. Before this incident, Mr. Wu had a very beautiful daughter. She was engaged twice, but both times her fiancés died before the wedding, leaving her unmarried at the age of 19. On the Lantern Festival, when Wu's daughter went to visit the Ten Kings Temple, a rascal noticed her beauty among the crowd. He secretly investigated her home, and at night used a ladder to climb over the wall, entered her bedroom, killed a maid hiding under the bed, and then attempted to assault Wu's daughter. She resisted vigorously and screamed for help, enraging the rascal who then decapitated her. Hearing some noise from his daughter's room, Lady Wu sent a maid to check, and upon seeing the corpse in the room, the maid was almost frightened to death. The entire family woke up, placed the corpse in the main hall, and placed Wu's daughter's head beside her body. The family wailed and mourned throughout the night. At dawn, Lady Wu uncovered her daughter's body, finding her body intact, but her head missing. Furious, she severely punished the maids who were supposed to guard the body, thinking they had been negligent and the body had been taken away by a dog. Mr. Wu immediately reported the murder of his daughter to the local authorities. Despite a 3-month search, the murderer remained at large. Shortly afterward, the strange news of Zhiyi's wife having her head exchanged gradually reached Mr. Wu's ears. He became suspicious and sent an old woman to Zhu's house under the pretext of visiting. When the old woman saw Zhu's wife's appearance, she was immediately horrified and ran back to inform Mr. Wu. Seeing his daughter's body still intact, Mr. Wu was puzzled and suspected Zhiyi might have used sorcery to kill his daughter. He personally went to interrogate Zhiyi, who said, "My wife's head was exchanged while she slept, and I have no idea how it happened. It's a false accusation to say I killed your daughter." Mr. Wu didn't believe him and reported the matter to the authorities. The local magistrate interrogated Zhiyi's family members, but the results were inconclusive, just as Zhu had claimed. After returning home, Zhiyi sought advice from the spirit judge. The spirit judge said, "It's not difficult. I'll let his daughter speak for herself." At night, Mr. Wu dreamt of his daughter telling him, "I was killed by young Danian from Sioux Creek. It has nothing to do with Mr. Zhu. Mr. Zhu wanted to change his wife's ugly appearance, so the spirit judge exchanged my head with his wife's. Although I'm dead, but my head remains alive. Please do not regard Mr. Zhu as your enemy." After waking up, Mr. Wu quickly told his wife about the dream, and she had a similar dream. They informed the authorities, and when questioned, there was indeed a person named Yang Danyan. He confessed to the crime, and Mr. Wu visited Zhu Erdan, requesting to see his wife. Recognizing Zhu's wife as his daughter, Mr. Wu became Zhu's father-in-law, and they became relatives by marriage. Zhu's wife's head was then buried with Wu's daughter's body. Later on, Zhu Erdan attempted the imperial examinations 3 times, but was disqualified each time for violating examination rules. Disheartened, he gave up on the idea of becoming an official. 30 years later, one night, the spirit judge told Zhu Erdan, "Your life is coming to an end." Zhu Erdan asked about the date of his death, and the spirit judge replied, 5 days from now. Zhu Erdan inquired if there was any way to avoid it, to which the spirit judge said, "Life and death are predetermined by fate. How can humans change it? Besides, to the enlightened, life and death are the same. Why consider life as happiness and death as sorrow?" Zhu Erdan found these words profound and fitting, so he prepared his funeral attire and coffin. 5 days later, he dressed in his finest clothes and passed away. The second day, Mrs. Zhu was holding the coffin, crying bitterly, when Mr. Zhu suddenly came in from outside in a daze. Mrs. Zhu was frightened, but Mr. Zhu said, "I am indeed a ghost, but I am no different from when I was alive. I am reluctant to leave you, a widow and an orphan." Upon hearing this, Mrs. Zhu burst into tears, and her tears flowed down to her chest. Mr. Zhu comforted his wife tenderly, and she said, "In ancient times, there was a saying about bringing back the dead. Since you have a spirit, why not reincarnate?" Mr. Zhu replied, "How can one defy fate?" She asked again, "What do you do in the underworld?" Mr. Zhu replied, "Judge Liu recommended me to manage documents and even bestowed an official title. There's no hardship." Mrs. Zhu wanted to ask more, but Mr. Zhu said, "Judge Liu has come to visit me again, so please prepare the table for drinks." After speaking, he left. Mrs. Zhu immediately followed her husband's instructions to prepare. After a while, she heard Judge Liu and Mr. Zhu drinking and laughing in the room, just like they did when they were alive. By midnight, they were both gone. From then on, Mr. Zhu would visit every few days, sometimes staying overnight with his wife and taking care of household chores. At that time, his son Zhu Wei was only 5 years old. When Mr. Zhu visited, he would hold him. As Zhu Wei grew to 7 or 8 years old, Mr. Zhu would teach him to read under the lamp. The son was very clever. By the age of 9, he could write articles, and at 15, he passed the county examination, still unaware that his father had passed away many years ago. However, Mr. Zhu's visits gradually became less frequent, sometimes only coming every couple of months. One evening, Mr. Zhu came again and told his wife, "Now, we must bid farewell forever." His wife asked, "Where are you going?" Mr. Zhu replied, "I have been appointed as Taiwa Chink, and I'm about to leave for a distant place for my duties. With busy official affairs and a long journey, I cannot come back." Hearing this, both his wife and son cried bitterly, and Mr. Zhu consoled them, saying, "Don't be like this. Our son has grown up, and our family is still well off. There are no lifelong couples in this world." He then admonished his son, "Be a good person, and don't neglect the education I gave you. We will meet again in 10 years. With that, he walked out the door and never returned. After that, when Zhu Wei was 25 years old, he passed the imperial examination and became an official, ordered to perform sacrifices at Mount Hua. On the way to Mount Hua, when passing through Huayin, a procession of men and horses came rushing towards him without avoiding Zhu Wei's convoy. Zhu Wei was very surprised, and upon closer inspection of the person in the carriage, he realized it was his father. Zhu Wei quickly dismounted and knelt by the roadside, crying bitterly. His father stopped the carriage and said, "Your reputation as an official is very good. I can now close my eyes." Zhu Wei continued to kneel on the ground, weeping. Ignoring his son's tears, Mr. Zhu urged the carriage to speed away. Just as he walked a few steps, he looked back, untied his sword from his waist, and sent someone back to give it to Zhu Wei. He shouted from a distance, "Wear this sword, and you will be prosperous." Zhu Wei wanted to chase after him, but his father's carriage vanished like the wind in an instant. Zhu Wei was melancholy for a long time, helpless. Taking out the sword his father gave him, he examined it carefully. It was exquisitely made, with the words engraved on the blade. "Maintain a bold spirit and an expansive heart, exercise wisdom with discretion, and act with integrity." Later, Zhu Wei became an official and eventually rose to the position of Sima. He had 5 sons in succession: Zhu Chen, Zhu Qian, Zhu Ti, Zhu Hun, and Zhu Shen. One night, Zhu Wei dreamt that his father told him, "Give the sword to Zhu Hun." Zhu Wei complied. Later, Zhu Hun rose to the rank of left censor and gained a great reputation in politics. Mr. Yishi's remarks: "Cutting off the feet of a crane and grafting them onto a duck is such an affected act, and the author is delusional. While the technique of grafting flowers onto trees, the originator is indeed quite remarkable." Moreover, performing such acts as hollowing out the liver and intestines of a person, referring to Zhu's heart transplant, or applying a knife to the neck, referring to Zhu's wife's head transplant, is even more extraordinary. Judge Lu can be described as an ugly but internally virtuous spirit judge. From the end of the Ming dynasty to the present, not far apart, I wonder if Judge Lu of Lingyang still exists. If his spirit still lingers, serving as his servant and driving his carriage would be willingly embraced.